For years, Honda dealerships have built their empire on inflated prices, hidden fees, and deceptive loans. But now, riders are waking up. The industry's gone from luxury to loss. So what happens when buyers stop buying and dealerships face the fallout? Stick around. This isn't just a slump, it's a reckoning. What's happening? As motorcycles became increasingly expensive, it was difficult for many riders to discern the point at which the value of the machine had stopped aligning with the price. It was a masterful move, one that altered the mental framework of an entire generation of buyers. What was once seen as overpriced now became accepted as the norm. This shift didn't happen overnight, but was instead a carefully orchestrated process that began years ago. The pandemic played a pivotal role in cementing this illusion. When the world's supply chains broke down, dealerships saw the perfect opportunity to push this illusion further. As global supply chains struggled and inventory became scarcer, dealerships used scarcity as their trump card. They argued that with fewer bikes on the floor, prices would inevitably rise. It wasn't just a justification, it was a strategy. Fear of missing out became a primary tool. Buyers were told that if they didn't act quickly, the prices would rise again the next day, and the bike they were eyeing might no longer be available. This fear played on the anxiety of a potential lost opportunity, making consumers feel the need to rush into a purchase they might otherwise have taken more time to evaluate. By the time the pandemic's effects began to wane, this inflated pricing system had become the new normal. Dealerships had pushed for an artificial sense of urgency that not only encouraged buyers to spend more but conditioned them to accept the high prices as part of their buying experience. This wasn't just a short-term tactic, it was the start of a long-term transformation in how buyers viewed value. What dealerships didn't anticipate, however, was that this manipulation would lead to a breakdown in trust and a major shift in consumer behavior would soon follow. If you've been surprised by the truths behind Honda dealerships' tactics, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. There's so much more to uncover about how the industry is changing, and you won't want to miss what we have next. The motorcycle loan trap. But the story of Honda dealerships' manipulation didn't stop at inflated prices. The real profit came not from the price tag on the bike, but from how the financing was structured. As riders began financing their bikes, what they didn't realize was that the true cost of their motorcycles wasn't just the price on the sticker, but the interest on the loan and the additional charges buried deep in the fine print. Dealerships had long relied on the tactic of pushing buyers into long-term loans, often stretching out over 5, 6, or even 7 years. On paper, the monthly payment seemed manageable. $200 here, $300 there. These figures looked affordable in the short term, making riders feel as if they were getting a great deal. But hidden within these seemingly easy payments were ballooning interest rates, deceptive fees, and terms that ultimately inflated the real cost of the bike to levels that most buyers would have never agreed to up front. A typical example: a $22,000 bike could end up costing $40,000 by the time the final payment was made, thanks to high interest rates above 8% and extended loan terms. Hidden fees like loan origination charges and mandatory insurance clauses added thousands of dollars to the total cost, often without the buyers even realizing. The dealerships, of course, spun this as a favor to the customers. "We're making it easier for you to afford your dream bike," they would say. But the truth was that these loans weren't about helping the buyer, they were about locking riders into debt. Riders who had initially been excited to purchase their dream bikes now found themselves shackled to an obligation that stretched far beyond what they had anticipated, with no easy escape. This is where Honda dealerships really began to pull the strings. The longer the loan, the more interest they collected, and those with less than perfect credit were hit hardest. These riders, often younger or working class, found themselves trapped in loans that ballooned over time, paying massive sums for bikes that depreciated the moment they left the showroom floor. The dream of ownership quickly became a financial nightmare. Skip the guessing. Our go-to gear is in the description. Grab what works and get riding. Hidden fees and phantom bikes. Honda dealerships didn't stop at inflated prices and long-term loans. The financial traps went even deeper, with a complex web of hidden fees added to the final price of the motorcycle. What you saw on the sticker, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, was just the beginning. Once buyers stepped into a dealership, the real price was revealed. There were destination charges, dealer prep fees, and market adjustments, all designed to add thousands of dollars to the final cost. These charges were never clearly explained to the buyer, but they quickly became standard practice across dealerships. These fees, which seemed official and legitimate, were little more than fictitious add-ons used to boost the dealer's profit margin. And what's worse, many buyers simply accepted them, believing they were part of the normal transaction process. But Honda dealerships didn't stop there. They also used artificial demand tactics, creating a sense of urgency that didn't exist. Bikes were marked as exclusive or in high demand, making buyers feel that if they didn't act quickly, they'd miss out. Dealerships hid inventory, staged sold tags on unsold bikes, and made customers feel like they were lucky just to be allowed to purchase the bike. What was once an open market for motorcycles had now been manipulated into a high-pressure sales environment where every buyer felt the weight of needing to act fast. And once they signed, they found themselves trapped in a system of inflated prices, long loans, and unnecessary fees that inflated the true cost of ownership. As the appeal of high-tech motorcycles wanes, another movement is quietly gaining ground: the rise of the used motorcycle market. The used market uprising. As new motorcycles become increasingly complex and expensive, riders are turning their attention to the used market. Once viewed as a secondary option, the used motorcycle market is now thriving. There's a growing realization that buying used is not just about saving money, it's about returning to simplicity. Older bikes, while not as shiny or feature-packed as their modern counterparts, offer a refreshing alternative to the overloaded high-tech machines dominating the market today. They provide the pure, unadulterated riding experience that many people miss. The appeal of the used market is undeniable. Bikes from previous decades are often simpler, built with mechanical precision and easy to work on. Riders no longer have to rely on complex software or proprietary parts to maintain their bikes. The machines are straightforward, and for many that's exactly what they want. Without the pressure of dealerships and high prices, buying used is often a more personal, hassle-free experience. Riders trust each other more than they trust dealerships. Private sales allow buyers to inspect bikes firsthand and negotiate directly, cutting out the middleman and avoiding the inflated prices and hidden fees that dealerships tack on. The used market offers something that the new bike market doesn't: freedom. Freedom from inflated prices, freedom from unnecessary tech, and freedom from dealership pressure. Buyers are increasingly bypassing dealerships entirely, opting for used bikes from fellow riders or smaller, independent sellers. These bikes may not come with a shiny new warranty, but they come with something more important: authenticity. They offer the kind of reliability and simplicity that many riders are searching for. The used market is the rebellion against the overcomplicated, overpriced motorcycles being pushed by major manufacturers, and it's one that's growing rapidly as more riders wake up to the truth. They don't need all the bells and whistles to enjoy their ride. If the industry doesn't change its approach, the collapse may be inevitable, and the future of motorcycling could be in jeopardy. Riding into extinction. The motorcycle industry stands at a crossroads. If nothing changes, the future of motorcycling as we know it could be in serious danger. With an aging rider base, a lack of younger riders to replace them, and a market increasingly out of touch with the needs and desires of the modern rider, the industry is heading towards extinction. Sales are declining, dealerships are closing, and events that once drew thousands of riders are now smaller and less significant. The once vibrant motorcycle culture is dying, and the business models that have sustained it are becoming obsolete. To survive, the industry must make a drastic shift. It can no longer focus on high-end luxury bikes or cater exclusively to the older generations. The future of motorcycling depends on simplicity and affordability, creating bikes that are accessible to a wider range of people, especially younger riders. Manufacturers need to prioritize bikes that are easy to maintain, affordable, and fun to ride. They need to strip away unnecessary technology and focus on creating a genuine, engaging experience for riders. The truth is, motorcycling was never about complexity. It was about the thrill of the ride, the joy of getting on a bike and feeling the road beneath you. If the industry can return to those roots, it has a chance to survive. But if it continues to chase after expensive, tech-heavy bikes that only a few can afford, the industry will fade into irrelevance. The answer lies in simplifying the riding experience and making bikes that are accessible to everyone. The future of motorcycling is in the hands of those who are willing to embrace simplicity, and if the industry doesn't act soon, it may find itself riding into extinction. The fight for survival. The motorcycle industry has reached a critical point. As the world around it changes, so too must the industry if it hopes to survive. Rising costs, shifting demographics, and changing consumer needs are pushing the motorcycle market to the brink. Manufacturers and dealerships alike are struggling to adapt to an increasingly uncertain future. For years, the motorcycle industry has leaned on tradition, on the same models and pricing strategies that worked decades ago. But the world has shifted. Riders' expectations are changing, and motorcycle dealers are finding that their old ways of doing business no longer work. The once stable market of baby boomer riders is shrinking as younger generations are increasingly uninterested in spending vast amounts of money on motorcycles. The economic challenges facing today's youth, from student debt to housing costs, make the idea of purchasing an expensive motorcycle feel like an unreachable dream. Even for those with the desire to ride, the cost of entry is simply too high, and the costs are rising faster than ever. Fuel prices, part shortages, and supply chain issues have made it harder for manufacturers to keep costs low. The economic environment is pushing prices upward, and dealerships are left scrambling to make up for the lost ground. As a result, bikes that were once affordable and accessible to working-class riders are now priced out of reach for many. The motorcycle market is facing the harsh reality that its traditional consumer base is not enough to sustain it. The rise of alternative transportation options is also posing a threat to motorcycle dealerships. Younger generations are increasingly opting for more affordable, practical means of transportation. Electric scooters, shared ride services, and even bicycles, leaving motorcycles in the dust. These alternative options are often more cost-effective, more environmentally friendly, and better suited to the needs of urban living. The result is a crisis for the motorcycle industry. Dealerships are struggling to stay afloat, and manufacturers are faced with a fundamental choice: adapt or face extinction. The battle for survival is on, and only those who are willing to evolve will remain standing. While the industry fights to adapt, there's another major hurdle: the rise of electric motorcycles. The electric dilemma. The electric motorcycle market promises to be the future of the industry. With no emissions, instant torque, and lower maintenance costs, electric motorcycles seem like the logical next step. The appeal is undeniable. Electric bikes are cleaner, quieter, and more affordable in terms of long-term maintenance. However, the road to mainstream adoption is not as smooth as many would hope. The main issue facing electric motorcycles today is the experience, or rather the lack thereof. For many riders, motorcycles represent more than just a mode of transportation. They represent freedom, adventure, and a visceral connection to the road. But electric motorcycles lack that deep, emotional connection. They're silent, almost sterile compared to their gas-powered counterparts. Riders are used to the rumble of an engine, the roar of the exhaust, the feeling of gears shifting as they cruise down the road. Electric bikes take all of that away. This lack of a soul is a critical barrier. For many riders, the experience of riding isn't just about practicality, it's about the thrill. The sound, the vibration, and the raw mechanical connection to the bike are what make riding special. But electric motorcycles offer none of that. They might offer faster acceleration and smoother rides, but they don't evoke the same emotions. Another major hurdle for electric motorcycles is range anxiety. Most electric motorcycles today can travel between 100 and 150 miles on a single charge. While this is sufficient for city commuting, it's nowhere near enough for long weekend rides or cross-country trips. Motorcycles are about freedom, and that freedom comes from the ability to go wherever the road takes you. But electric bikes, with their limited range and reliance on charging infrastructure, put a damper on that sense of adventure. Charging stations for electric motorcycles are also in short supply. While car manufacturers are rapidly expanding public charging networks, motorcycles are often left behind. Many public charging stations simply aren't equipped to handle the unique needs of electric motorcycles. Riders can't easily use fast charging networks, and in many cases, the charging process is slow and inconvenient, further discouraging potential buyers. Despite these challenges, the shift toward electric bikes is not entirely avoidable. And as the motorcycle market struggles to adjust, the traditional dealership model itself is facing a breakdown. The death of the dealership. The rise of electric motorcycles and the changing needs of consumers is leading to the inevitable death of the traditional dealership model. For decades, motorcycle dealerships have been the gatekeepers of the industry. If you wanted a bike, you had to go through them. But as riders shift their expectations and buying behaviors, dealerships are increasingly irrelevant in the purchasing process. The once sacred dealership model is being challenged by new sales methods, primarily direct-to-consumer sales. Brands like Harley-Davidson and BMW have already begun testing online sales models, allowing buyers to purchase bikes directly from the manufacturer, bypassing the traditional dealership. This direct-to-consumer model offers transparency, convenience, and better prices. Riders can see the actual price of the bike without hidden fees or markups and complete the entire purchase online. For younger generations who are used to the convenience of online shopping and the simplicity of direct-to-consumer models, this approach is an attractive alternative. No pressure, no upsells, and no hidden fees. The direct-to-consumer model appeals to the new generation of riders who prioritize ease and transparency in their purchasing decisions. Dealerships, on the other hand, are stuck in the past. They rely on the old model of markups, hidden fees, and high-pressure sales tactics. Riders have become increasingly aware of the manipulation and are refusing to buy into the system. The pressure to push additional accessories, warranties, and financing plans has left many riders feeling exploited. As a result, dealerships are facing a dire future. They must evolve or face irrelevance. The next few years will determine whether it survives or fades into obscurity. Only time will tell which dealerships and manufacturers are able to evolve and meet the needs of a new generation of riders. Will the industry rebuild, or will it collapse under the weight of its own outdated business practices? The financial cost of inaction. For decades, the motorcycle industry operated under an unwritten rule: keep prices high. Add a bit of luxury to justify the cost, and the customers will keep coming. That mentality worked when demand was consistently high and competition was minimal, but now things have drastically shifted. The financial cost of inaction in the motorcycle market is no longer a hidden risk. It's an inevitable consequence. Dealerships and manufacturers that fail to adapt to the changing landscape are seeing the signs of a crumbling empire. For starters, rising costs are making it harder for dealerships to maintain their once profitable operations. The inflated prices, combined with mounting manufacturing expenses, have stretched profits thin. As supply chains struggle to recover from the pandemic's disruptions, the cost of raw materials continues to climb. In turn, dealerships are left with unsold inventory that's increasingly difficult to move. The very models that were once in high demand are now seen as overpriced relics. Buyers are walking into showrooms and seeing bikes that sit on the floor for months, unsold. The dream that dealers once sold, that new motorcycles were scarce and exclusive, is gone, replaced by the reality of oversupply and dwindling interest. It's not just the inventory crisis that dealerships must face, it's the financial collapse that follows. With fewer customers willing to pay the inflated prices and avoid the financing traps, many dealerships are drowning in debt. Floor plans, which once financed the purchase of new inventory, are now weighing heavily on dealerships as bikes continue to depreciate while sitting unsold. As dealerships struggle to meet their targets, there's a clear divide between those adapting and those stubbornly sticking to old models. The ones who refuse to change, who continue to push outdated, overpriced models, are already on the path to failure. The need for affordable bikes has never been clearer. The transparent pricing and clear value offered by competitors have highlighted just how out of touch many motorcycle dealers have become. If dealerships don't learn from these shifts, they'll face the same fate as other industries that failed to adapt: irrelevance. The financial consequences of clinging to an outdated business model are not just a risk, they're a guarantee. The consequences of inaction aren't just limited to the dealerships themselves, they extend throughout the entire industry, affecting everything from consumer expectations to the future of motorcycling. The future of motorcycling. The future of motorcycling is staring the industry right in the face, and it's not just about adapting, it's about reinventing the way motorcycles are sold, designed, and experienced. As the market shifts, it's clear that the brands and dealerships that thrive will be the ones that embrace simplicity, affordability, and direct-to-consumer models. Gone are the days of relying on inflated prices and upsell tactics. The future of motorcycling depends on providing value to consumers, not just selling them a lifestyle. In order to survive, manufacturers must simplify their offerings. Today's consumer is not interested in bikes overloaded with unnecessary tech or features that inflate prices. Instead, they want a bike that works, one that's affordable, reliable, and easy to maintain. Simplicity doesn't mean stripping away quality, it means focusing on the essentials: performance, reliability, and value, without adding layers of complexity that the average rider doesn't need. With rising costs in living and a changing economic landscape, the new generation of riders can't afford the luxury-priced bikes of yesterday. Manufacturers that don't understand this will be left behind. Moreover, embracing direct-to-consumer sales is the next step for the industry. Online models have already revolutionized other industries, and motorcycling is no different. Brands that offer transparent pricing, no haggle deals, and the ability to customize and order a bike online will appeal to the younger generation, which is more accustomed to streamlined online shopping than showroom negotiations. If Harley-Davidson and others don't start innovating in this space, they'll lose out on future riders who are looking for a simpler, more transparent buying experience. The future of motorcycling is already taking shape. Brands that embrace this shift will lead the industry in the next decade, and the others. They'll fade into irrelevance, lost in a market that's leaving them behind. As brands and dealerships face the challenge of adapting to a changing market, they must also contend with the rising importance of trust, a vital currency in the future of the industry. Want to stay in the loop on how the motorcycle market is shifting and how dealerships are adapting? Subscribe now for the latest updates and be the first to know what happens next. Rebuilding trust. If there's one thing that dealerships have lost over the years, it's trust. Riders no longer believe in the promises made by dealerships that once seemed like pillars of the community. The days of predatory pricing, hidden fees, and upselling are quickly coming to an end. Consumers are smarter now. They've been burned, and they're no longer willing to put up with the manipulation. The motorcycle industry, at its core, must rebuild trust, not just with individual riders, but with the community at large. The path to rebuilding trust starts with transparency. Dealerships must stop hiding behind hidden fees and false promises. No more destination charges that don't reflect any real cost. No more market adjustments that artificially inflate prices. Buyers want to know exactly what they're paying for and why. If dealerships can't offer transparency and honesty, they'll lose the trust they've spent decades building. Another essential element is respect. Dealerships need to respect their customers by offering them fair deals and treating them like partners, not walking wallets. Building relationships that go beyond the sale can go a long way in winning back customers who feel betrayed by years of deceptive sales tactics. Riders who feel respected and valued are more likely to return and more likely to recommend the dealership to others. The motorcycle industry has been built on loyalty, but it's clear now that loyalty can't be bought through manipulation. It must be earned through genuine care for the riders and a commitment to offering them the best value for their money. While trust is the foundation, it's not the only thing that needs to be rebuilt. The future of the industry depends on how well manufacturers and dealerships embrace change and adapt to new consumer expectations. Embracing the future. As we look toward the future of motorcycling, the road ahead is anything but clear. The industry stands at a crossroads. Manufacturers and dealerships must decide whether to embrace the change that's already happening or cling to outdated models that no longer work. To thrive in the future, the motorcycle industry must embrace simplicity, affordability, and transparency. The future of motorcycling will be defined by how well manufacturers can create bikes that serve the real needs of consumers: reliable, simple, and easy to maintain. The days of luxury pricing and bloated features are gone. In a world where young riders are struggling to afford even basic living expenses, the motorcycle market must shift its focus to value over prestige. At the same time, trust will become the most important currency for manufacturers and dealerships. Riders want to know that the brand they're buying into is honest, transparent, and respectful of their needs. Innovation won't just come from new tech, it will come from a commitment to honesty and simplicity. Those who embrace these values will lead the industry. The rest? They will fade into irrelevance, left behind as a new generation of riders chooses bikes that are affordable, reliable, and transparent. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're as shocked as we are by the changing industry, give this video a like, drop your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on the future of motorcycling.